Hey friends, today I'm going to do a pressure canning for beginners video. This is going to be a little bit longer than my typical videos, but if you are new or you just want to learn, hang tight. So today we are going to be pressure canning potatoes, and I have a big bag here. The reason why I'm choosing potatoes is one, because there's a little prep work involved, and then they're very versatile after you've done that basic prep. Two, it's an item that's often bought in bulk, and maybe you can't get through the whole bag before they start to go bad. And three, if you're doing this because you are on a fixed income or on a budget, this is an item that's often given out at food distribution events, like food pantries and stuff. And if you are going every week, you might have a lot of potatoes and you're like, I don't know how I'm ever going to eat all of these. So that is why today we are going to do potatoes. I'm going to start out by checking all my equipment, getting all my equipment ready. So for me, that means washing jars. Now you can probably see I did wash a bunch of jars yesterday, but most of them were quart jars, and so I am also going to wash some pint jars so that I can make different size containers of potatoes. Okay, the next step is to get your potatoes ready. So if you are going to leave the skin on, you want to wash all your potatoes. I am going to peel some of mine. So I've got my compost bucket here, and I'm going to peel my potatoes. Now that we have peeled all of our potatoes, the next step is to cut them into the shape that you want for your jars. And yes, I am aware that I'm cutting this on the sink. I do not have a lot of counter space. This tripod is taking up a lot of space. So just do what I say, not what I do. So I am cutting my potatoes into kind of like little chunks. But you could also slice them, like if you were going to do like au gratin potatoes, or you could cut them into French fry shape. So whatever shape you want for your potatoes, but this is how I'm going to cut all of mine. I got all of our potatoes chopped, so now we are going to soak and rinse them to rinse off excess starch. Okay, so we have rinsed and soaked our potatoes, and now we are ready to move on to loading our jars and starting our pressure canner. I'm going to put water in my pressure canner. So we are doing a cold start method. We're starting with cold potatoes, not cooked, cold water. So we want cold water in our pressure canner, or room temperature at best, because this is really what it's going to be. So I'm going to put 2 quarts of water into my pressure canner. Each one is going to have different requirements for water. Make sure that you read the manual for your particular pressure canner, but mine is 2 quarts. Okay, so it's over here. Let's see if I can turn you without knocking off my tripod. Okay, so I'm going to put this in here. And this way the water is going to be as close as possible to the same temperature as the water that we put in the jars with the potatoes. So, 2 quarts of water. Okay, check. And then turn you back over here to the sink. Okay, now I have washed my hands, and I'm going to get a funnel. You don't need one of these, but they do make life a lot easier. And I'm gonna do pint jars, okay, but the method would be the same if you're gonna do quart jars. Okay, so my clean hands, my jar, and I'm just going to load my jar, and I want to get as much in there as possible, as many potatoes in there as possible. So once I get it full, I'm going to get this tells me how much headspace is in the jar. You could use a chopstick, you could use a butter knife, you could use literally anything to do this. I'm just kind of moving these around and trying to make sure that if there's any open space that I'm getting the potatoes down into it. Okay, we're going to fill the jar with water, but if I could potentially fit some more potatoes in the jar, I want to. But this is 1 inch of headspace perfectly, so this looks good to me. So now I'm going to fill all the rest of my jars with the potatoes like this. I've got all my jars filled. We're just going to fill them with water. Now, at this part of the process, if you wanted to season your potatoes with a little bit of salt or something like that, you could, and you would add it into the jar right now. I am choosing not to season mine because I do not know how I'm going to use them in the future. You could use these. You could just make like fried breakfast potatoes. You could make potato soup with these. You could make potato salad with these. So you could do a lot, and I choose not to season mine at this stage just because I don't know what I am going to do with them. And I don't want them to not work for the purpose that I'm going to use them for later. So I'm filling all of these jars to 1 inch headspace, which I am checking with the measurements on this little guy. I don't actually know what this is called. But a general rule of thumb is that this bottom lip is 1 inch headspace. So I am filling all of my jars with water, and this is just that same room temperature water that's in my pressure canner right now, which is why we put that room temp water in there. We want them to be about the same. And then once I have got them all filled with water, I'm going to turn my stick over, and I'm just going to go through real quick one more time and kind of poke the stick down in there. We're debubbling, so we're trying to make sure that there are no little hidden pockets of air in our jars. And you might notice that the potatoes shift around a little bit now, that there's water in there, because maybe the water helped move, you know, some of the potatoes into an air hole. And you'll see little bubbles come up. I saw them on this jar. Let me see. Maybe you can see. You might see little bubbles come up. That's where you're hitting an air pocket, and you're forcing that air out of the jar. So you just want to run your butter knife or your chopstick or whatever you're using. And you may notice that you need to add a little bit of water after that, just a tiny little bit, but that's because there was air in there and you just released that air. So now you know your water level is going to be different. So we're going to do that with all of our jars and just give them a good stir. Okay, and then you need a paper towel, and this is distilled white vinegar in here. We're going to wipe the rims of our jars off. We're getting any contaminants off the rim of the jar so that the lid can make a nice clean seal. And so I'm holding the jar down here at the base, and I am just wiping with my paper towel to make sure I get the whole rim, and we're just going to give that a real quick wipe down. All right, and then we have our lids. So we put our lid on, and then we have our ring, and you put your ring on. And so I like to screw it on like that, and then I'd hold the jar and just twist until I feel resistance, and that is finger tight. Okay, I'm not trying to clamp the lid down, and I don't want to leave it too loose. Just finger tight. So twist the lid, twist the ring until you feel that little bit of resistance. Ooh, I don't know how that ring passed inspection. Okay, I'm gonna have to get another ring. But again, just put the lid on, and then the ring, and then, okay, ready? So until you feel the resistance, and that's finger tight. So we're going to do that for all of our jars. Okay, all of the jars have their lids and their rings on. So now I'm just going to place each of them into the pressure canner. And I'll show you what that looks like real quick. Nice, evenly spaced, no jars touching. I could put a 6th jar in the middle and be totally fine. Okay, so now we're going to put our lid. We have our gasket in there. So mine has these little arrows that line up. And you line it up, and then you're going to twist the lid on, okay? And we're going to make sure that it's centered on the burner. And I'm going to turn my burner on to about medium. I don't want to go super high heat because we're doing a cold start here. If the water was hot and the contents of the jar were hot, we would go with high heat. But we're just going to go with medium, and we're going to slowly let this come up until steam starts coming out of the vent. Okay, so see the steam coming out? So this is venting. We're going to let it do this for 10 minutes so it can get all the steam out of the pressure cooker. So steam, my pressure gauge is up. So I'm going to take my weight. It's 10 pounds for my elevation, and I'm going to put it on top of that. And then we are going to wait until that weight starts moving around and dancing. That is when we will start our timer. Okay, so you can hear it. It's starting to make that noise. It's jiggling. Now we're going to set our timer for 35 minutes, and I am going to turn my heat down just a little bit because it will maintain pressure, and I don't want the jiggler like going crazy, okay? So 35 minutes for our pint jars, 40 minutes if you did quarts. Okay, timer just went off, so we are going to kill the heat, and then we're going to let this sit for 10 minutes. It's slowly going to come down. The pressure gauge is going to drop. After 10 minutes, we'll take the weight off, and we'll let it sit another 10 minutes. Then we will open it. Okay, so last step. It's time to take them out. So I'm going to open my lid away from me because there's still any steam in there. It's going to come out. Yeah, there's still some steam. And then I'm going to take my jar lifters and I'm going to lift out. And I have a towel sitting over here. So I'm going to lift them out and set them on the towel. And then I'm going to let them sit for 24 hours. Okay, so it hasn't been 24 hours, but all of my lids, they're still hot, have sealed. So when I push down, the lid doesn't have any give back. This little button in the center doesn't pop back. They're still really hot. I'm still going to leave them there. I'm not going to move them, but they are all sealed already. So just wanted to update you on that. And if you have any questions about this process, please drop them in the comments. I would love to make more videos like this. Let me know what you think about this longer video format.